much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
You thought I wasn't coming, didn't you? I got you. All right, welcome to Inside the Numbers, 8 minutes late. Your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit. All right, last night, share, all that. I'm going to skip over all that since we're getting going today. I was trying to get somebody on last minute. Apologies for that. Look, last night on What Are the Odds, we were talking briefly about migration, state-to-state migration, how that's impacted battleground states. And I thought we could do that a little bit more detail today and look at some other past polling because, overall, what I think is going on here is that, there's the usual nonsense. I mean, at this point, folks, I really, I've become so cynical. I really don't know how to explain some of the ridiculousness that we're seeing other than intentional garbage. This is like incestuous relationships between media and campaigns and pollsters and PACs and all sorts of stuff that really should not be, in this industry. Really what should just be is, in people doing their best job to try to tell you how elections are going to shake out. And as we know, for the last several election cycles, that has not gone well for forecasters who are reading the polls and the polls who are sourcing it all, because that's what's happening here. And actually, it's really the media sourcing it all, because the media is funding most of them, although not all of them. And now we're running into an even bigger and more unique problem, which is the entrance of exit PACs like Center Street PAC and a lot of these others that frankly are just trash. John Bolton, others that are putting this stuff out there that really should be condemned by the polling industry, and it's not. And that's a tragedy because ultimately it reflects very poorly on the rest of us. And then you have another layer there. The media reports it all, and then the forecasters who the media then prop up. It's really like a form of circular reporting for people who maybe have intelligence experience. You know what I'm talking about. You're really using the same data source, and every expert is supposedly independently corroborating it, right? Or at least it gives you the impression that this is being independently corroborated, right? Well, if this pollster thinks this is happening with a race and that matches the media narrative, right? And then the forecasters, they say, oh yeah, that's definitely the state of that race. It's all bullcrap because it's all sourced by the same garbage. And they're all just echoing each other. And sadly, in the last several election cycles, that's gotten worse. And the truth be told, how long has this been going on? Well, truth of it is, it's been going on a very long time. Longer than 2016. 2016 was just the first time that we really saw a blatant example in a presidential election. And because it has a status of the president, or as remember Chris Steyerwalt, Fox News's former, polling guru, who once said that, you needed to toss out the tracking poll that we did in 16 because, that's just not how you conduct polling. And our Fox polls are quality polls. And, in his words, it's the daggum presidency or daggum president. I don't know. I don't speak idiot, so I don't know what that expression is. That was the argument because presidential elections up until that point, with the exception of a few pretty big misses by Gallup, you have Truman Dewey. That was a big miss. And then really, Gallup did a fantastic job for decades, for the most part. A fantastic job for decades, at least in their final predictions, until Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama. In Barack Obama's reelection campaign, which they, for those who don't know, came up with Romney +1, even though largely, this is why I'm saying that the forecasters are really perpetrating the biggest fraud of it all here, because their forecasts don't even make sense with what they tell you goes into their forecasts. They use the polls they want to use, even when all other indicators or variables that should be in a model suggest the opposite is going to happen, or at least there's a greater likelihood of an outcome. They'll use the polls to or to outweigh. Outweigh is a better word, really. Speaking the language here, let's stick with the language of the field. They'll use the polling to outweigh all of the other variables that suggest the opposite is going to happen. However, if you have a state or a race where they don't like what some of the polls are saying, then they'll use fundraising and other. It's a very arbitrary mode, a very arbitrary method. You notice it is not transparent at all. You don't know what's going in to these models all through the summer, despite some, even before the summer, despite public polling suggesting that a race was going in a Republican favorable direction. They would use things like fundraising to keep from moving the needle on that race. Okay. Now we went into the summer, despite all of the other variables, and everybody knowing that summer polling is very screwy. It almost always favors Democrats and overstates Democratic support versus the end result, the final result. Everybody knows it, yet that was used as a way to move the races in the Democratic direction. Now we're in the fall here. Republicans are actually outspending Democrats in most of these races, and yet the fundraising variable means nothing to them. I wanted to go back and show you some of these, and I got a ton of them. Some I can't screen share with you, but I'm going to read them off of this data set that I put together to give you an idea of some of the past. It's not a miss. It's a scam. These aren't misses. It's a scam at this point, folks. I mean, we're not talking about one election cycle. We're not talking about 2 election cycles. We're not talking about 3 election cycles. Again, problem with pre-election polling, what has been prevalent and goes back quite a bit. It just didn't infest presidential level polling, and less so some of the others. Gubernatorial had been pretty decent, but exit polling as well for a very long time. Veteran exit pollsters, the people who conducted exit polls, who pioneered the field, began shouting as early as the early 2000s that this was a problem. We had a problem. The house is on fire. It led to some really bad calls in 2000. It led to some really bad calls in 2004. It led to some really bad calls in 2010, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. It's become a serious systemic issue. And yet we continue year after year to go, just regurgitate. We're like in the same cycle. And some of us have been out there trying to break that cycle, and we peel off, whatever percentage of the consumer that we peel off every year. But for the most part, it's still a narrative, and it has to stop because it's a handicap. It's become part of what we used to call at the model, the media handicap. All right. Who is getting, more favorable coverage, et cetera, et cetera. All right. That used to matter more than it does now. And now it changed completely because 2016 was a landmark for situation for them. And what they decided was we can't cover them. Even if we cover them badly, we must not cover them at all. Or if we cover them badly, fine, then go back to being a media blackout because name recognition matters. And then truth be told, they realize that people don't really trust them. So as long as they hear of a story, they'll go and they'll try to figure it out themselves. And they just can't have that. Social media is out there. They're not censoring enough, according to them. There are no guardrails, as MSNBC calls it, right? So, or not enough guardrails, because there certainly are, but not enough for them to feel that they're secure enough in the handicap they used to have, which was a monopoly on information. Handicap was being generous. This is more like a monopoly. All right, starting with what we talked about last night, and then we're going to go and we're going to take a look at a lot more. I'm going to call out a bunch of races that you won't believe at one point. These so-called forecasters looking at poll results, the results that they liked. The problem with doing what they do is that we're all human beings and we're all looking for confirmation or affirmation of what we personally believe and or want to happen. And they're not guarding against that at all because they're living in a bubble and everybody is in agreement in the bubble. So there's no adversarial force that's telling them to snap out of it. You may be headed yet again for another widespread embarrassment. Snap out of it. Nope. They can't hear it. It's muffled out and the sound is basically distorted by the bubble. So they're left in their own biases. And that's what we're seeing right now. All right. So starting with what we talked about last night, I shared a link for people. You may have seen it or not. Let me pull this up and at first, when I first shared it with you guys, it wasn't on set so that everybody could see it. All right. So now I have changed it and I will reshare that link now. Okay. Give me 1 second. It's loading up. All right, cancel. Let's just anyone with a link, copy the link. All right, YouTube or locals, you're first in case you missed the show yesterday. Getter, here you go. Rumble, here you go. All right. Am I missing anybody? I got Rumble, YouTube, Getter. I think that's it for now. Oh, YouTube. I didn't get you. Here you go. All right. What you're looking at here, and for those of you, don't worry, I'm not going to spend that much time on it because we did talk about it briefly yesterday on What Are the Odds, but and a couple of things we did, but the time went by so fast that I really didn't get a chance to expand on it. All right. So let's go back to Virginia. And by the way, I was actually wrong. Pat Citarelli only lost New Jersey that night by, it was less than 3 points, actually, 2.5 points. All right. Basically, the pollsters in New Jersey had Phil Murphy winning anywhere from 5, which was an extremely low end, to all the way up upwards of 15 points. In summer polling, he had in spring and summer, he had a lead that actually was in the 20s at one point. One poll was 31 points. All right, crazy. I know, crazy. And of course, all the election forecasters, you may not be shocked to hear, basically had the race as likely Democrat or safe Democrat when Pat Citarelli. By the way, what happened because of that? What happened? The Republican Governors Association abandoned Pat Citarelli. They focused only on Glenn Youngkin, who didn't really need their help like that. He didn't, and I'm going to show you why. Of course, he won by 2 points, a little over. We had him winning by 2.6, right? Was our final poll 2.6? He won by 2. The pattern for him was there. And in New Jersey, a lot of us were actually arguing that there is a long history of a very blue state, New Jersey, throwing out Democratic governors whom they viewed to be incompetent or corrupt. And that Pat Citarelli, you may remember some of the shows, actually had a chance to beat Murphy. He did. But the Republican Governors Association, the Fox News all of the election forecasters, the RGA believed all of these people. So Pat Citarelli was left with no money in the bank to basically get in his car, drive up and down Route 9, and shake hands from the Regent Diner to North Jersey. That's all he could do. Now, granted, that's how you win as a Republican in the state of New Jersey. Up and down Route 9. Monmouth to Bergen, from Urbana to Bergen, Mercer to Bergen. That's how you do it. But you need money to do it. And the problem is all of that money was diverted away from him because people did not believe he could win. Even though, why? Because the polls showed Terry McAuliffe was still in the lead in the state of Virginia. They did. Some of the polls for Terry McAuliffe were comfortable wins. Fox News, before they put out their outlier Youngkin +8, after Robert and I put out polling that showed Youngkin ahead, we were the first to do so. And again, I was right. Matt at Insider Advantage did have a lead for Glenn Youngkin. But Fox News threw a ridiculous outlier out a few days before the election. It was Youngkin +8, and it was just totally outrageous. He was never going to win by 8 points. But most of the election forecasters still had that state going to Terry McAuliffe. I'm going to read you dates about when actually they moved their ratings. This is what we are, jokingly recalling. We're jokingly calling the Virginia White House control of Congress model. All right. Now, imagine this being your only variable. All right. Imagine this is your only variable in your model, even though really it should not be, but it's a major predictive variable, right? And obviously it's showing you. And when I first put this up during the election, this column right here was TBA, to be announced. Okay. But you could see the pattern. If a party's president won the White House that preceding year, the other party would win the state of Virginia. It gets even more predictive when you look at who controls Congress. All right. And obviously it's color coded. I don't have to explain a whole lot of that to you. So what would have told these people that Terry McAuliffe was going to win the state, gubernatorial election? What other variables out there being that predictive was telling them that? So why on October 12th did 538, Larry Sabato's crystal ball, the Cook Politico report, Inside Elections with Nathan L. Gonzalez, all have the state as leans Democrat? Why? Cook Politico report eventually did. They are one of only two that changed it to, but I'm going to tell you when they did. All right. October 19th, they moved it to a toss-up. All right. After what? October 26th. Sorry. It was leans Democrat. And on October 19th, for the rest of them, Inside Elections did tilt it Democrat on October 26th. Larry Sabato's crystal ball was the only one who leaned it Republican at the end, and he did so the day before the election. That's it. The rest of the time, despite what is a very clear pattern here, the rest of the time, it was still a McAuliffe plus race. Why? Well, some of the final polls. The Washington Post still had Terry McAuliffe up at the end. They routinely gave him a 7 to 12 point lead. At the very end, they herded to a McAuliffe +1, but nevertheless still had McAuliffe up by 1. That poll was conducted between October 20th and October 26th. We went into great detail about them and the Monmouth poll when we released our own. And we said, this is the difference. Actually, groups are not voting all that different in some of these polls. The difference is the model, the electorate they are modeling. In some cases, in some of these polls, they actually gave Terry McAuliffe an electorate more favorable than Joe Biden in 2020. We went over the voter analysis modeling. We showed you the inferences shifting to the right, which is another indicator to us that a state is moving to the right. And it was just a matter of how much. And we did think in the end that Youngkin obviously had the advantage. Christopher Newport University routinely gave Youngkin a large single-digit lead, a solid high single-digit lead. At the end, they finally herded, but they still gave McAuliffe the edge, 49-48. Suffolk University, 46-45. Emerson eventually found a tie, but again, all of that did show a tightening in the polling, but the rest of them, it was all still going behind this. There was a backdrop of all of these polls still giving McAuliffe the edge, and some of them not giving. I mean, it's really cute that Ballotpedia, if you go and look at it right now, it's really cute that Ballotpedia would only pull the last 4 that showed a very close race. Fox News is the only one that's included. They didn't put in Insider Advantage. They didn't put in Trafalgar. They sure as hell didn't put in mine. But if you were to include the rest of the polling, you would have seen that it wasn't the narrative leading until that final week before the election. The narrative was that Terry McAuliffe's lead may have shrank, but it was still a solid, single digit lead. If people like us were not around, and the other two that I mentioned, if people like myself and Trafalgar and Insider Advantage were not around, ladies and gentlemen, there would have been no polls showing Youngkin ahead. Maybe Fox News would have done it anyway because they thought Youngkin was going to be a rhino. So they gave Youngkin an outrageously big lead. Hold on, I got a war jet going overhead and a screaming kid. Hold on. All right, I'm back. The Bill Crystals, the Karl Roves, they all loved Youngkin at first until Bill Kristol didn't after in the final stretch because Youngkin started to actually campaign against some of the stuff, the transgender stuff. I really think he just played them all like a fiddle, frankly. He was masterful at it. I don't think Youngkin was ever that guy they thought he was. And he's certainly not governing like that guy. He's governing on everything he ran on for the most part. All right. Two-Face, the song for What Are the Odds is called Highway. All right. Anyway, and I'll send that out to you guys later. Or you could just, I think the link is in the description. It's in a bunch. If it's not in some of the recent episodes, it's in the other one. But you can clearly see the pattern here showed that Youngkin should have been favored. That the Harvard model gave Youngkin, in fact, a 52% chance of winning. That's it. That's all. That's all. Despite intense voting behavior, that's all they gave him. All right, some of the other races I'd like to bring up here. Okay, 1 second. Pull it up. I didn't want to pull them all up at once because if I do, and I got to log into this to make sure I get it. Hold on. I didn't want to pull it all up at once because if I do, then what happens? By the way, out today, Rasmussen, inflation remains a top issue for voters. Remember that because we're going to talk about that quite a bit. Okay. We all know about 2020. We can go over the worst pollsters, but I want to talk about the most recent midterm polling. Because was 2014 going to be an outlier? Was it going to be an outlier? That was a big question for me. All right. And at the end of the day, 2018 was horrible. It was worse than state level polling in 2018 in many respects was worse than 2016 because many of these races were not even outside the sampling era. And I'm going to read you some of the polls that we saw from it. And then I'm going to give you some of the race ratings for these. They were very important races. All right. Let's scroll down here. Okay. All right, 2018. Let's start with the Florida Senate race. Okay. Some of the polls. Quinnipiac, Nelson +7. All right. St. Pete, Nelson +5. On and on. CNN, Nelson +8. By the way, at the end of the day, even though they were both very close elections, most people got this wrong. The margin for DeSantis was slightly bigger than the margin for Rick Scott. Most pollsters had it flipped. And by the way, in our spring polling, we also had it flipped in April. All right. Not so much. They were both about the same. It was both plus ones at the end. But 538 had that race basically a 70+% chance that Bill Nelson would hold on. It varied day to day, but 70+ never went below. The crystal ball had that race as leans Democrat. Good for you, at least. Cook Political Report. Also, this race was in the governor's election, this race was leaning Democrat. The governor's race was a blowout. Remember CNN, they had a lead that was nearly 12 points. It was a 12-point lead for Andrew Gillum. That poll made a splash, and most people a day later lean that race further to the left. Here's the kicker, though. CNN, within a week, had put out another one that you never saw, and it was a Gillum +3. but you really never saw it because it never made coverage. It was really just for posterity. Nobody ever talked about it again. Quinnipiac also gave a 7-point lead, on and on and on. This race, nobody, except for the PPD election forecast model, nobody had those races leans Republican. Nobody. That's it. Just us. Nobody. And if you remember in 18, I said, we're going to do something here. We're going to put up the model only, which is just the variables, no polling. Then we're going to put up adding the polling to the model. And then we're going to show you just a map with the polling, what it shows. If you remember, the model outperformed all of them, including the hybrid model. Okay. So just the variables alone were more predictive than even variables plus the polls. Okay. We can go on here. Here's a couple more. Senator Marsha Blackburn was going against Democrat Phil Bradenson. All right. In Tennessee, a CNN poll showed the race was basically tied. All right. Fox News gave, Fox News showed the race nearly tied. CNN gave Marsha Blackburn a 3-point lead. That's it. She wound up winning by 11, and that was a leans Republican state. If you guys remember, some people actually even moved it to toss up for a brief period, but the crystal ball didn't play with that. 538 did. They moved it into basically toss-up column. Oh, it was touching toss-up because of the polling. And of course, that was never a toss-up state. But what was, Phil Bradenson is outperforming the polls. He's a popular Democratic governor, former popular Democratic governor. So he's really showing people that, at the end of the day, you can win in a southern state if you're that old kind of Democrat, a moderate Democrat, right? In Ohio, not a single poll gave Republican Governor Mike DeWine the lead over Democrat Richard Cordray in the final months. All right. The often cited MNBC News, they're all the same to me. Marist poll, which I've criticized for their problems with reaching certain regions and being ridiculous with education. They had a brief moment where they put DeWine in the lead in the month of June. But in the end, they heard it. And they gave Richard Cordray a 5-point lead. The Suffolk poll, which everybody is making a big deal about now, showing Tim Ryan, with still holding a slight lead over Vance, gave Richard Cordray a 7-point lead in their final poll. In the end, Richard Cordray went down, and he went down fairly easily. Now everybody expects Mike DeWine to win handily. That same poll in September, late September, gave Claire McCaskill a 3-point lead over Josh Hawley. Now Senator Josh Hawley, a 3-point lead. The Fox poll had that race tied. That race was rated a toss-up by everyone. At the end of the day, they missed. Josh Hawley beat her, and he beat her pretty bad. Let's move on to Indiana. The Fox poll. Joe Donnelly, 7-point edge. That race was leans Democrat on most models. One model had it a toss-up, crystal ball had it a toss-up. 538 had this race going to Joe Donnelly. So did everybody else. Mike Braun obviously beat him and beat him pretty handily. So, we're going on and on down the line. North Dakota. This is unbelievable. We were the first poll to show Heidi Heitkamp down by double digits. Everybody else had Heitkamp within a within the same excuse me, I was just reading something. Guys, I don't want. All right, well, let me interrupt here and tell you guys this. I love everybody, I really do. But at this point, if you send me a poll, I'm not going to look at it. Right, Laura? You're in here. I can see you're in here. If you send me a poll, I won't look at it. It's too late. It's October 12th. I don't want to see anybody else's polling. I will, and some people will say, what about your own biases? And if you're not, looking at other people, how do you know whether or not you're missing something? The truth is, in 2016, I learned a painful lesson because they really had me convinced. I'm going to put out what I'm going to find what I find anyway. Okay. The only difference for me is that It's my own mental health. I mean, my wife will tell you, I really didn't believe. I was at the point in 2016 where they had me not believing my own polling. And of course, I put it out. But in one state in particular, for instance, here's how this can hurt you. If every other poll has Donald Trump losing the state of Ohio, and you poll the state of Ohio and find a comfortable 5-point lead for Donald Trump, in your final poll, you may look at those voters and say, those what turned out to be Obama Trump voters. You may look at them and you may say, maybe they just won't be that big of a share of the electorate as they claim. Let me weight them to a more historic proportion of the electorate. And in the end, that was wrong. I mean, we still had Trump winning the state, but he won it by 8, not 5. Or right, more than that, maybe actually in 16 a little bit. So, yeah, no, it's okay, Snowman. I'm glad you did that because I just wanted to tell everybody. I know everybody's what do you think about this poll? At this point, I'm really going to, or at least less, comment on them, less than I have in the past because it's enough to drive you mad. It really is. I mean, that's why I went ballistic on Fox in 2020. Biden plus 5 in Ohio. That race was never close, which is why I'm getting more cynical over time. So the truth is, some of these people, folks, they can't figure out what they're doing wrong. That's the truth of it. Some of them know what they're doing wrong, but they don't really know how to fix it. So they're trying to pretend like they're fixing it. They're still getting it wrong. But at this point, I honestly do believe that the vast majority at this point, they know they're wrong. They don't care. They're using it as narratives. They're using it for their own narrative game. And Robert always says, that's fine because it makes for good betting opportunities. And that's funny, but that's true. But the fact of the matter is, I think that this may be more dangerous at this point because it used to be even they would play a narrative game and then maybe toward the end they wouldn't want to look terribly stupid. So they would start at the end to try to reflect reality, really try to narrow it down and get more accurate. That never made much sense to me to begin with, that argument. Well, pollsters really try, they dig in at the end. Why weren't you digging in before? What were you doing for the rest of the summer, the spring, the summer, and then the early fall? What were you doing? Or early pre-fall, we call that season fall, but the truth be told, fall is until September 21st. What were you doing before? Why weren't you trying your best before? You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense. So you were providing the media the narrative they wanted to hear. You were providing your preferred political candidates the narrative they wanted to hear. Is that what you were doing? So I don't know what else you'd be doing to fill up that time, ladies and gentlemen. You're either trying to do the best you can do or not. All right. So, North Dakota. I mean, some of it's just absolutely insane. So here we are. Yeah, there's just no right. You guys see, I'm looking at your comments. You understand what I'm saying? That explanation doesn't make any damn sense. You should always, which is why I tell you guys, should always be trying to do the best job you could do. And that's why I've always argued that you should be looking at likely voters, even if you don't publish them. You should be trying to look at likely voters all the time. I understand in the off-cycle season periods, right? When you're really in between the silly season. I understand using a registered voter universe. We did it with the Public Polling Project until a certain point. I get that. But you should still be looking into voter screens. We started our voter screen very early. And that's because you want to see if anything's changing. It's kind of like dipping your toe in a pool before you jump in. You kind of know the temperature that the pool is, so you're not really hit with some unexpected shock. If you don't dip your toe in from time to time before you jump in, and then you jump in, you may find it's a little too cold or a little bit too hot for your liking. All right, so you should be tracking it more often than not. All right, God, it's already 12:42. Are you serious? We got to take a break here. Man, that went quick. I have so much I want to get into. I didn't even get into origins. I need to get into origins. This is something we got to talk about. So when we end this break, damn, that was fast. I want to look back because some people might say maybe that's just one poll, Rich, and that's all you found. No, it's not. In California, we have polling that shows people who are left there. We can see who's left, who has been leaving. And then, also too, we'll go back and we'll look at some 2020 polling when we ask place of birth. How has state-to-state migration impact some of these states? And then is that contributing to some of these polling errors? Is this part of the problem? Because who's moving around? Well, these working class voters are moving around. All right, it's true. And if a bunch of Northeastern white working class move to Florida, for instance, and a pollster can't pick up on that, or let's say a bunch of Venezuelans have been naturalized and they are overwhelmingly conservative, and a pollster doesn't pick up on that, you can really blow, especially since so many of them use exit polls from prior elections to weight their results. That is a major, major mistake. You could be in the ballpark, but I would ask you, go and look at Arizona in a bit in more detail. Look at the exit polls from 16 in Arizona. Look at the exit polls in 18 from Arizona, and then look at them from 2020 in Arizona. Folks, the bottom line is electorates almost never stay the same. So if you're waiting to the prior vote, you're absolutely going to blow your poll. You better figure out how to project the electorate better than that. Now, you could look, once you have a good likely voter model, you could look at it and you could say, well, this doesn't make that much sense. Why does Arizona look so Republican? And, exit polls could be a little bit of a tool there where you go back. Our polling in Arizona looked very Republican. And two things were happening. One, it got more Republican. Two, hot shocker. Two, a lot of Democrats were calling themselves independents. They really weren't independents. They're Democrats. But that's what they feel like they are today. So it kind of inflated our Republican number a little bit. But then you can go back and look at 2020 and see that Democrats were only about 26% of the electorate. That's it. Republicans were like 37. It was ridiculous. It was huge. R plus electorate. Look at it. Even though the voter file, as those of you know who are members of our local community, the voter file did tick up more Republican. It's not that Republican. It's like a little about R plus 5. Maricopa being about almost R plus 3 again. It was even under Trump. Almost even. Barely edge for Republicans. And now Maricopa's over R plus 2 again, headed to R plus 3. All right. Yeah, let's take that quick break. Okay. All right. Now from a word from our sponsors. Look, food shortages could be coming in the United States. You better believe it. Drought, inflation, even new policies from the government are pushing America's food supply to its breaking point. And that's why survival food is more important than ever. Do what Laura and I have done and create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots Survival Food Kit. It's not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years. Super survival food. Hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the USA. These kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're light resistant, they're water resistant, and they stack very easily. They take up almost no room, ladies and gentlemen, in a closet, in the garage, wherever you need it. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit. That's got a load of goodies in it. All right, personally, it's my favorite. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile today, like Laura and I have done for our family. If you go to their website and maybe you want to check out their very cool, such as this, their 72-hour survival food kit, all right, then don't forget to use promo code TPP10, TPP for the People's Pundit, 10 for 10% off. TPP10. Use it at the cart, at checkout, in your cart, at checkout to get 10% off your entire order because they have a lot of really cool stuff. And I got to tell you, my favorite is that 3-month kit, but there are a ton of other goodies on that website. You'll get, what I would do, honestly, is get that. Yeah, well, you're not going to get solar battery stuff like that. I could see some people bringing that up. That's not going to come in a kit. What's going to come in a kit, it changes. I don't want to say, but the Freedom Stove, really useful stuff. The Freedom Stove, a solar water, but actually, Laura, I'm wrong about that. The solar water boiler came in a free kit. One of the free kits. One of the 3-month kits. It was one of the free gifts. Also, Laura got a ton of seeds that she liked, stuff that is durable, easy to grow. All right. And a bunch of other resources that are really, really cool. That's what we wanted to do first. And then we did order stuff separately. But the kits that are 3 months have a load of different meals in it. You know what, Laura? I'm skipping over that other break. We'll come back to that other one. I'll take a break in at the top of the hour. I just don't want to do one back to back. All right. Let's see. Let's go to let's go to education. Looking at education. Let's go to Arizona. We're going to do a brief recap of what we found in this one, and then I'm going to pull up polling from 2020. Let's talk about the migration of citizens. We're talking about citizen migration here. State to state migration. And yes, there will be not born in the U.S. All right. So we'll be looking into some of that as well. And some of that is legal immigration. And as you know, sadly, because, when I say sadly, because illegal immigration doesn't just bring illegal immigration. It's a much more comprehensive problem than that. It brings fentanyl that kills your best friend in a bathroom of a Habib, bodega or something. But what I'm trying to focus on here is state to state, meaning if people leave California, is it really true? Is it really true that they bring liberal politics with them and turn a state blue? That's what a lot of Republicans say. If they go to Texas, Nevada, Arizona, Florida, right? And then where are these people coming from? And we're going to take a look at that. All right. Let's pop this up here just for a quick recap for people who didn't see it. I even zoomed in. Oops, that's education. Like I said, I got to change it. Place of birth. And I'm actually going to sign in a market site. And I'm going to add generational because I want to show you generational stuff here. All right. So Arizona, you can see if they were born in the state of Arizona, Mark Kelly has a bigger lead, 49 to 39. Okay. For governor. And I'm going to try to do this fast. Kerry Lake leads, but it's only by 1. Native Arizonans is Blake Masters' struggle point. Okay. Let's see for the Secretary of State. Look, congratulations. It's one group. Adrian Fontes is actually winning. Mark Fincham has a lead in that race. But it's 43-41. Attorney General Hamadeh is just... I'm really impressed by the performance of Abraham Hamadeh. I got to be honest. I saw a Trafalgar poll that showed Hamadeh killing it. But, it's like you want to see your own stuff. You want to see what you find yourself. I was very, very, very impressed that Abraham Hamadeh is doing as well as he is doing. Not that I didn't think he was going to win. I did think he was going to win. And the fact is, Democrats think he's going to win, which is why Democrats pulled $2 million from Mace on that race. They gave up on her. She's done. Here's generation. And actually, while I'm at it, let me add place of birth detail, and then I'm going to refresh it. It's always a pain now. For some reason, it wants to do this to me all the time. It never wants to put it in the new slot. There we go. Generations in there. And I'm going to do place of birth detail. Now, mind you, some of these are going to have very small data sets. So, if you had 10 people say Ohio, most of it is California. You'll see. A lot of it is California. It's nesting. I'm trying not to nest it. I don't know why it's doing this. Aha! All right. Save it. We save it. Let's refresh this page real quick. All right. But you see it down the line here. If they're not native to Arizona and they were born in another state, they are voting more Republican. Let's look at place of birth detail, and let's go back to the Senate race, okay? Whoa, we got a lot of states here, all right? Obviously, a chunk of the sample came from the state of Arizona. The rest came from somewhere else, all right? Let's go to California, which has quite a bit. You can see that Blake Masters is actually carrying those who came from the state of California. We are not talking about a small sample here, all right? We're talking about over 100 interviews. Mark Kelly is trailing Blake Masters among people who came from the state of California. Another big chunk, which we routinely find, is the state of Illinois. A lot of people, by the way, who left places in Illinois because of cost of living and because of crime. Blake Masters carries the people who are coming from the state of Illinois. Again, not a small data set. The state of New York is about a 2-point lead for Mark Kelly, but we are talking about a smaller set. Outside the U.S., Blake Masters is actually carrying, all right? So some of this, the rest of it is kind of small, but you'll get the gist of it. And then we'll take a look at presidential polling from 2020, and you're going to see something, you're going to see a pattern here, all right? Mark my words. All right, let's look at governor. In the state of California, Kari Lake is stomping Katie Hobbs from people who left the state of California and came to Arizona. By the way, Colorado. I mean, you could look at some of these smaller states. It's just that, look, if it's a small sample, I don't want to focus on it too much because it could be really, it could be really distorted. But Illinois, California, we're not talking about that small samples here. In Illinois, 53-45, Kari Lake. Even some of the smaller states, you wouldn't be surprised, came from the South. Look at Maryland. It's small, but again, Massachusetts, right? For the most part, people who are not born in the state of Arizona are voting Republican. All right. Let's look at, while we do this, let's look at, and by the way, I don't have to go through the other races. You get the point. Let's look at generation. If you are a first generation, in other words, if they did not choose, all right, that they were blatantly somewhere else, which is why we do have some that said not native to the U.S., all right? And by the way, Republicans are carrying that group, all right? By a small margin, but nevertheless still carrying that group. If they're first generation, meaning they are the first ones to be born in the United States, this used to be a pretty good group for Democrats, not horrible. This was the best group for Democrats for a while, but now it's getting older. People are maturing. Right, third generation or more is actually tighter group than second generation. In other words, if their parents came, grandparents came here, and their parents were born in the United States, and then they were born after their parents in the United States, it's the most Republican group right now. All right, look at Kari Lake, 50 to 42, not a small sample size here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, you look at the Senate. We see almost an even race with second generation. First generation is bigger group for Mark Kelly. Third generation and more. By the way, this is the group that Blake Masters has got to do better in order to pull ahead. Third generation or more is going for Blake Masters, but again, it's tight. Oops, that's the governor. Same thing, just so you know that this pattern cuts across. First generation is actually really tight. Second generation is a 2-point lead for Fincham. He does a little bit better with older people, Mark Fincham. Older voters seem to not want a Democrat in a position of state level office at this point. All right. Even though some of their Senate preference and even presidential preference can be a little bit different. All right. First generation, 46-40. Abraham Hamadeh is doing very, very well with them. Second generation is the only one that this is one break from that, is the only one where the Democrat does better. But again, the older vote with the Attorney General. I don't know. Some of these like law enforcement offices, the seniors are changing their voting behavior with them. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit weird. Oh, look. Yeah. People are like, oh, the most. Yeah. You know what? We can briefly go over that. It's going to be up there at some point anyway. So I'll just do this. All right. Okay. You guys can see. All right. I'm probably not supposed to see this. You guys see that? Okay. You guys see that? This one's gotten tighter, even though I suspect they will vote against allowing in-state tuition. All right. This is the other one. You guys know what a 309 is? For most Republicans, you'd probably be very happy with that result. That's the voter ID proposition. It's going to pass overwhelmingly. Create the office of lieutenant governor. Require 2/3 majority. All right. You guys got that? All right. And that was a bonus. So if you watched Inside the Numbers today, you got a bonus. All right. I hope you caught up with that, because probably shouldn't have done it. But don't forget, this poll was sponsored by CDM.press. Don't forget to go to CDM.press to learn more, including some of my other commentary. All right, so let's take a look at 2020's polling. And we're going to look and see. Now, things are a little bit different, but they are not all that different, meaning the shift away from third-generation voters being very Republican to the more newer, younger voter being more Republican, and older voter getting more Democratic slightly. In other words, too, how about people who left other states? Did they bring their liberal politics with them if they came from California, for instance? The truth is that pattern will hold. All right, let me get slide over income. Okay, so here, if you came from the state of Arizona, Joe Biden actually led Donald Trump on that issue, on that demographic, 48-45. If you came from California, Trump led Biden 50-43. All right. Again, notice Illinois is another big chunk. We're seeing this over and over again. California, Illinois, New York, these blue areas where cost of living is very high and crime is horrible. Oh, you guys can't see it. I didn't put it on the stream. Son of a gun. I got to go back. Sorry about that. Arizona, you could see there. Right? We did have Trump slightly leading Biden in Arizona. And I'm not going to get into it, but, I think I'm not going to get into it. Arizona, you can see Biden, if they came from the state of Arizona, Biden had a 48-45 point lead. If they came from the state of California, Trump led 50-42. Okay. If they came from the state of Illinois, another large group, again, 57-39 Trump. So these people who are leaving these big blue states, if you came from Michigan, you went for Trump, basically 70-30. All right. There's another big group here. If you came from the state of New York, you went for Trump, 61-37. You guys see a pattern here? Outside the U.S. was a Biden. This is changing. This is changing now. All right. It's a big deal. It's changing. One of the states, Pennsylvania, if you went from Pennsylvania to Arizona, there are some transplants, but look, you're talking about a separating by 4 responses in a sample of 25. That's why I said outside the U.S. and the other one is also take it with a grain, right? Ohio, that's Trump, pretty large. Texas is small. 18 for a state the size of Texas, small. All right. You would notice here too, by the way, that we were actually right with the exit polls here. If you came from suburbia, then you went for Donald Trump. So a lot of this commentary was bullcrap. All right, let's go to generation. First generation went for Donald Trump. Second generation went for Donald Trump. The third or more is what got close. And then of course, the not native, which was interesting. All right, so this has been happening. You can almost see it. When you look at it, you can almost see that you can see the start of the pattern, right? Or the trend. If it wasn't a trend until we started to see it continue this year. But even in 18, McSally did actually very well with people who are not born in the state of Arizona. She lost people who were born in the state of Arizona. She did not do well with third generation or more. Same thing with Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz would have lost if it was native Texans only. He would have lost. Governor Greg Abbott pointed that out on election night. He was winning, and he was winning easily. But he pointed out, he took a snapshot of the exit polls, and he said, look, Republicans are winning the lion's share of new movers, and it really was not close. It was basically a 60-40 split. In some of this, we're seeing roughly the same. For the most part, people are leaving blue states. They are red voters. And they're young. They're younger. They are younger. And what happened? What can account for some of this? Well, education. It's that simple. And I don't even like to use the word education. This is proof of indoctrination. That's what you're seeing here. Indoctrination. As once upon a time, people used to politically mature, and their kids, they got go to places they never got to go for, college, whatever it may be. You're seeing that. You're seeing spoilage, the luxury. I'm trying to talk plain here. I don't care if I'm insulting somebody. You're seeing the luxury of being able to worry about pronouns and not how to pay for diapers. That's what you're saying. And in some of the cases with seniors, I'm going to say something that's really controversial, but it's really true. They killed a lot of Trump voters with COVID-19. They did. They did. You want to know why seniors, look, things change. I brought up this yesterday. Why is this some college and associate group, associate's degree or some college? Why is that group so Republican now? Well, I imagine we're looking at some of the no college group from 2016. And they had opportunity. They remembered the economy. Maybe they started going to college. They got an associate degree, but they re-entered the labor force because the labor force was booming. And they just decided, you know what? I can make a living. I'm going back to work. I'm going to go make money and not listen to the madness of this liberal arts degree professor. I don't need an education in humanities. I have a skill, and I'm going to go apply it for $100,000 a year. Because the most Republican group, what they always fail to tell you when they mock people for not having a college education, what they always fail to tell you is that the most loyal Trump voter, and most loyal MAGA person is not a dumb person at all. They make money. They do well. Just because they're not college educated does not mean they're making $30,000 or below. In fact, that is the low income group that belongs to Democrats. The 30 to 50 becomes Republican. The 50 to 100 becomes more Republican. And then if you have no college degree, but you make $100,000 or more, or actually, it's more accurate to say 75 or more. If you have no college degree and you make like $70,000 or more, you are the most loyal Republican voter. Because you're doing okay. Some of them are even thriving. I mean, there are tons of people who make 6 figures but don't have a college degree. We poll them all the time. So obviously they're not dumb, right? And in fact, they also fail to point out, when we break it down by education, it's not really no college. It's some college, associate, and then high school or GED. Those are the core of the working class Trump base. Because once you get below high school and you say, I don't have a high school degree and I don't have a GED, that's a Democratic constituency. Polling tends to just regroup them and lump, because they're a small group, but they tend to regroup them and lump them with high school or less. We do it too. But if you separate them, you will see that is the, what's the nice way to put it, folks? It's the public assistance group. It is. Really, at this point, the swing among 4-year degrees is going to determine whether or not this is a Republican gain, a pro-Republican midterm, or a total wipeout. If 4-year college voters do like what, a Trafalgar poll sees, Insider Advantage's latest is 3, and what we're seeing in some of these districts, we just looked, by the way, because you could look at Kerry Lake, and she is not doing badly at all with that group. Hamadeh is basically tied with 4-year degrees. There's nothing wrong with assistance, Laura, as long as it's, a safety net and not a life choice. All right, let me make that clear. Safety nets, I get it. I don't know who hasn't needed a hand up, but there's a difference between a hand up and a hand out, Laura. There is. And that's just my Italian pride in me. That has nothing to do with, my grandmother didn't even want to wait on the line in the Great Depression. So
I just wanted to clarify. That's it.
Saying, yeah. Look, people need assistance. And that's fine. But I'm talking about those people. That's a freaking life choice for them. They have no intention of getting off SNAP, Laura. They don't care that they like their WIC checks. They don't care that they don't want to do any better. They just want to survive. They don't want to thrive. They're good right where they are. And any other money they make on the side, it's hiding from the tax man. And it's earned usually by doing something wrong. I'm talking about them. Let's be honest. They're Democrats. I'm not saying anything wrong here. Am I factually incorrect? And that's why a ton of people, a whole bunch of people from from Getter to YouTube. Flat tax. Exactly. By the way, everyone hates Vladimir Putin now. All of those think tanks praised him a couple of years ago when he got his flat tax through. So unbelievable. All right, speaking of the economy and destroying economies, talking about debts and stuff like that. I mean, by the way, how long are we supposed to continue that how long are we supposed to be afraid of the third rail conversation, right? It's totally ridiculous because it's not sustainable. It can't last forever. It really can't. Yeah. So you guys get the point. Overall, this generational change, I would say since 2010, okay, that has not been the case anymore. And we've taken a real deep dive into California. And I've given show presentations on this. Some of you guys probably have seen that show. They have lost their working class base. And from 2010 on, that became an outstate migration of the working class. From 2000 to 2010, let's just call it the prior 10 years. If you left, you may have brought your politics with you because we've done a lot of research on this. That was happening. But after 2010, something else happened. And it changed. It became a cultural fight. It became a matter of I can't live the lifestyle I want to live if I stay in the state. And California is now left without a working base, a shrinking working base. For those people say, good, we only want it. Well, you'll need somebody to serve you at the restaurant, fool. Hello? All right. So, So overall, that's what we're seeing. But let's take a real quick one again, and we'll come back and talk more about it. But you see the overall trend, right? I know. It's there. Believe me. As you do. I mean, you don't believe me. Look at the data. Believe yourself. And by the way, what are you going to do with that economy once it collapses, California? Listen, the last time the economy even looked like this, the stock market tanked 50%. We had the worst quarter ever last quarter. Not ever, but definitely since the Great Recession. The U.S. dollar last time lost 46% of its value. What's going to happen now? The price of oil quadrupled. Gas going back up right now, by the way. Yet, while the U.S. economy collapsed, inflation ran through the roof. And guess what happened? Gold shot up 1,300%. Silver, 2,400%. So if history repeats itself, we could see it happen again. And I'm not going to miss out on the biggest gold and silver boom of my generation after the financial crisis. So that's why I want you to go right now to tpplikesgold.com. tpplikesgold.com. You'll get you'll get a chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and silver. You can get up to 10K depending on your situation in free silver just for doing it. This is a rare opportunity. Don't miss out on what could be the best opportunity to protect your retirement savings. Go to tpplikesgold.com, tpplikesgold.com, and diversify. All right. Diversification is the name of the game. I have been reading this book. Damn. Are you right out there? You're not, right? Somebody sent me this book. It's fantastic. I want to share it with the book club, which, by the way, oh my goodness. Why didn't we have the book club last week after me advertising that it was going to be the final chapter of the book for that book club? Because I forgot about my own birthday. I did. I forgot my own birthday. When you reach my age, you just don't care anymore. When you hit 40, I did not take it well. And I think something in me just kind of turned it off. I don't want to hear it anymore. But you have family, and they're going to make you hear it. So, like, there's no way you're doing this. There's no way you're doing, we're going to have a family day. And we went to Mumfest. It was amazing. Yeah, Russ, what's the point at this? What's the point of observing your birthday after you're 40?
Because you observe it for others, because the others are appreciative of another year spent with you. Therefore, you celebrate each birthday, whether you like it or not, baby.
Hogwash! No. I get it, and I really do get it. It's just that I just don't care. I just don't care anymore. Although I had a blast of a day with the fam. I did.
You sure did. So don't act like you didn't love it.
It was. No, I look, we had COVID. They took out all this stuff. You got to understand, guys. I just saw the wholesale inflation number. I almost dropped it. I didn't. I pulled it back. So that beat expectations, 0.4 of a percentage point. That's much more than expected. So much for inflation stopping. They'll claim, though, that's a victory, Laura, because it didn't rise as much as it has been rising. That's not a victory. That is not stopping or, inflation is slowing when you have those kinds of numbers. That's not a victory. It's still abysmal, and it's being added to the already historic rise in inflation. So, this idea like, oh, well, it slowed at a lower rate. No, we have major problems. Yeah, it's bad enough. My body is 50. I don't need my actual age to be 40. Amen, man. Amen. And that's the thing. I don't know what my body is. I don't know what the hell age my body is. I don't even want to know. I mean, I have been, I got to get, ever since I had that damn tooth pulled, I got lazy with getting back on the horse, and I need to get back to the bench. Amanda, I love mums. I do. We all love mums, but I love the fall. And it really, what it is a fall festival in the town. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And COVID took it out. I mean, this is a town that dresses up like you're in a Charles Dickens novel at Christmas. It's a big deal. Pumpkin picking is a serious activity. In this house, pumpkin carving is serious business. All right. And now that COVID's over, I'll tell you what, that's one thing Republicans they're leaving on the table. Republicans, sadly, have not been able sadly for them, have not been able to push this universal message, like, don't forget what Democrats did to you, because so many of them were cowards. Cowards. And were afraid to go against Fauciism. Now, those of us who are right, you don't even get to take a victory lap, or you'll get, a strike or your account removed. Or I'll tell you, though, that's why I say all the time, I'm proud, so proud of the Public Polling Project. We were the only ones who had the fortitude, the testicular fortitude, to use better words than the ones Laura would like me to use. We were the only ones who had the testicular fortitude to poll the question of adverse effects. And I actually know of people who were trying to get other pollsters to do it. Nobody would take the job. And I said, sorry, I'm already doing the public polling project and we're already adding something like that. I don't like to double dip. Maybe you can go to this person. And I even referred people that you people know. And they were like, nope, I asked them, he won't do it. Probably afraid to get banned from the fake pollster scorecard. Meanwhile, what happened is nothing short of democide. Does everybody know what democide is? RJ Rommel, democide is death by government. It is a public policy that resulted in the deaths of constituents, whatever you want to call it, subjects, citizens. I'm actually going to show you this. It is a government policy that caused it. In most cases, in most studies, they consider, or the work by R.J. Rummel really focuses in the 20th century on genocide and mass murder. But the definition, he says, is more than just it. You know, here, let me just read this. Genocides in China, Nazi Germany, Japan, Cambodia, Turkey, Yugoslavia, Poland, Soviet Union, and Pakistan. But areas of suspected genocide he brings up too: North Korea, Mexico, and feudal Russia. But the results, it's more than that. Democide he defines as death by government, actions the government takes that results in the deaths of human beings. And in these cases are the extreme cases, but policies can cause, what is effectively a government murder. And you cannot tell me that the nursing home policy is not an example of democide. It absolutely is. And there's more and more, related to our response, our pandemic response, that I could bring up. Then it goes to what we were saying before. Why is there this big change? Well, we lost a lot of people. There's no doubt that had some impact, coupled with education and some of those more I almost don't want to say educated, Laura. I want to say institutionalized. That's what I want to say. We have to come up with a word. Yes, government. Yes. Government is the number one murderer. It's not even close. It's not even close. When you look at cause of death, who created them, nothing has killed more human beings than left-wing ideology. Nothing. Even if you considered Hitler to be right-wing, which he is not. Mao put his ass to shame. So did Stalin. Marxism, according to Rummel, is a particularly dangerous, yet Pol Pot, Khmer Rouge, right? It's a particularly dangerous form of socialism, but it's socialism nevertheless. It's a form of socialism, as is fascism. Sorry. The only reason why Americans and others consider Hitler to be right-wing is because we once referred to Joseph Stalin, who himself is a mass murderer, we once referred to him as Uncle Joe. He was a beloved figure in this country during World War II. We needed him. The last thing we wanted was to put him in the same basket, by the way, with our president, who was a leftist. Ladies and gentlemen, our own president was a leftist. A pretty extreme one, too, who had an entire domestic policy, his entire domestic agenda was centered around centralization. So they took Hitler, who largely held the same beliefs, which is that government-centered solutions is how society should be structured. Government should be able, maybe leave the private sector in place, but the government dictates to the private sector what to do, how to allocate resources, how to deal with labor, all of that. Price fix, all of that. That is fascism. The difference between fascism and communism is that communism claims it's publicly owned, these sectors that would otherwise be private, when that really just means government owned. You don't own it. You don't own anything. Want to nationalize your oil sector? That's fine. What happened when, let's say, the Venezuelans decide, I want a piece of that company now. Can I? What exactly is my own share of that company? Yeah, right. So, that there's without a doubt the Holodomor. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. And here, actually, guys, you guys can search it, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's a great book. I mean, if you don't have this, you absolutely have to read this book. I mean, this is legit. Government absolutely is the killer here. Laura, you got all this stuff in my shopping cart. I can't even put this stuff up. What do you got in here, Laura? Oh, Mustela for the baby. Okay. Well, I didn't want to show people my shopping cart, so now I have to take this.
So just empty the shopping cart. I'll put it back. Don't worry.
Oh my God, I bet you will. Hold on. There's the book. You guys laughing. I can see them laughing.
May add another thing or two.
Here's the book. I'm glad to see you get her. Locals. There you go. Rumble. There you go. Even if you don't buy it, check it out. And I'd very much, you could honestly, I mean, don't tell them I said this, but you could probably find that for free online. I know there are excerpts online. There's this tendency of us to want to say there's no moral equivalence between Hitler and anyone else. And that's because of it's not, it is a racial component, of course, but we pretend like there's nothing else. There's, the Khmer Rouge, right? Stop the Holodomor. You just brought that up. Of course there were. And I'm not really sure it's any more evil. If you're Mao and you execute I don't even know how many more, it's in there, by the way. RJ Rummel will discuss it. I mean, all in all, it's 100 million souls that were just lives that were just at least just exterminated because of an ideology. And his prescription is literally, it is democracy, but left-wing ideologies are dangerous. And I don't know how, though, in a country like the United States with our Constitution, I don't know how you can't outlaw a thought. That makes me uncomfortable always. But as Sam Adams said, that they are, quote, schemes of leveling, and under our Constitution, wholly unconstitutional, right? So, and it's really interesting, though, basically talks about 30 years war. It's cool. Yeah, 100 million died to the commies alone, I think it is. Yeah, read it. It's great. It's been years since I read it, but it's one of those books where you're just never going to forget it. You're just never going to forget it because it's incredibly eye-opening. It's seminal. It's right up there with, I would put Robert Higgs, Look, this is a really good question. I wanted to bring up. People are talking about generational shit. It's not Friday, but it's a good point, right? Have you ever polled anybody who were, quote, people that were military dependents, i.e. raised all over the U.S. and internationally? Yeah, absolutely. We can actually, believe me, depending on the mode, we can see whether or not you are, I know you're a citizen and I know you're registered to vote in a place, but maybe you're deployed in Okinawa or something like that. We can see that. We can actually see that. And of course, we're going to tell whether or not you, are a military household or not. Some of that, though, we just don't. The samples are always rather small, so it's they're typically, we don't focus on them because we lump them into a bigger category. But they're going to be very small samples. You may be surprised if in a national poll you spoke to like 5 of them, depending on how big that sample is. But that was a really good question. It was very good question. I'm trying to figure out a way to show you this. Maybe I have one from Big Data Poll that I'd be able to show you. I think I do. I may have uploaded it. I want to show you California because, of course, it's the creme de la creme of the examples that people use for this. Come on, load up, big boy. Let's go. I think I could look at media and show it to you. I just hope it's not that blurry. And there are several slides that I'd like to show you, but there's one that really illustrates it very well. You gotta be kidding me. Maybe I can find it in my own images where it's bigger. I think this is gonna work. Give me 1 second. Yeah, generally speaking, that's why I'm trying to find the most one that's updated better. Yeah, that's pretty close, but why is it only showing the western states? All right, so for instance, I mean, I could read them off to you. I just really did want to show you a chloropathy map of the whole thing. And apparently it's not going to let me. The presentation is small, Laura. I don't know why it's so damn small like this. But I can tell you that migration to and from California, as far as how do I put this nicely? If it wasn't for illegal immigration, California would have no population growth. People that are native or first generation or more, but native U.S., they are leaving California in droves and have been since 2010. Big numbers. And only through illegal immigration have they been able to maintain positive population growth. The only two-state migration that they have benefited from are people that live in other areas of the country, of course, and they get some kind of degree and, very tailored professional class degree. Maybe a techie thing, right? So think Silicon Valley. You grow up in Ohio, maybe you go to Ohio State. From there, you go to like MIT and get your advanced degree in some ridiculous thing, and then you go work for EA Sports and make John Madden games. I don't know, something like that. But it's a very small amount overall, by comparison. So it's being offset considerably by the people, the number of people, percentage of people that have been leaving. So they have experienced a negative trend in state-to-state migration. Their outward migration is negative. Let me see if I'm just looking through files here to see if I have versions of bigger ones. And they also happen to be extremely, I got one that works. Yes. This is great. I'm so happy. They happen to be, by race, I would say. You get less white, not just because of immigration, but because the white working class have left a lot quicker, and they're not being replaced by those people who are moving there for different jobs. All right, so let's look at this. And I have no other way to do this, but to just show you the loaded up file. Copy to clipboard. Okay, let me see if I do this. Boom. There we go. Much better. Okay. So as you can see here, this is in 100,000s. All right. There's negative would be, this is, the point, the access point here is 0. Anything to the left becomes negative, to the right becomes positive. All right. You can see all in all how many people they have gained from college graduates. They gain college graduates while losing less educated adults. Okay. However, bachelor's degree or higher is just over 150,000. All right. Some college or associates, more than that alone, over 200,000 left between that period. This is a 5-year period. Okay. High school or less, more than what they obtained in college grads left. and no high school diploma is about 70,000 they left. I mean, so you're just seeing some college and associate degree, basically almost, I would say a little over 250,000 that left at that point. So it's over. It's not being offset, not even close. And then let's go back and see. I may have to stop sharing this for a second because yes, I don't want to show that, but we're going to pull this up. I'm going to go back and get another chart that shows where these people are going if it lets me. All right. Why? Because it absolutely confirms what I've been saying. All right. Let's load up more. That's it, huh? Thought I had more than that. Thought it was going to give me more than that. But there's that chart. You can't be the only one. I may have to. It is the only one, unfortunately. All right, so let me see if I can read this myself, and I'll give you a. No, it's too small even for me. LASIK. But overall, the top states that they went to were as follows: Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, some went to Colorado. I didn't forget Texas, right? Because it goes Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and then Florida. And the reverse of that, okay, is Illinois, Ohio. I think that is New Mexico. That's weird. They don't even have that much population. But again, it goes to show you they're not gaining as much as they're losing. And the top places, ironically, that we had found in our polling match that almost identically. So what we see is that they are losing that working base. So those states, are they really getting more blue because Democrats have because look back to 2004. George W. Bush lost California, but he lost it by like 10 points, right? Now California is 30-something points. Is it really that California got more Democratic because of like mind changing? No, California is not the California of 2004 anymore. It's not the same people. It's not the same demographics. They basically changed the electorate to get a larger margin. That's it. And they're concentrated more areas. By the way, it's an argument against getting rid of the Electoral College because what it shows is a concentration of like-minded people into one area. One area. And we see that in some other spots as well. People who are leaving like Chicago, Illinois, for instance, and they move to a southern state. All right. They're not taking blue politics with them. If they're going to leave, they're going to leave for another blue state. That's what we have seen since 2010. All right. I don't know that I can't say I'm familiar with that. But yes, and this is the thing. Illegal immigration is the only reason why California hasn't lost like 3 congressional districts. You're absolutely right, you. Absolutely right. If it wasn't for that, and that's something I really was dying to show you. I don't think that I can, though. I don't think I mean, if you bear with me, I know how to take it out of a presentation. You just got to bear with me while I do it. But you can very clearly see that it's only illegal immigration that is keeping that state in the black as far as population growth. Native growth is negative. It's nothing. It's nil. And people are leaving it like crazy. New York, I'd say, it had a chance to avoid that. There were some Democrats who were trying to make New York more business friendly. And I know that sounds crazy. Like, what, Rich? Yeah, they were. They really were. However, COVID came along and they absolutely abandoned the idea of trying to change tax policy and regulatory policy in the state of New York to make it more friendly to those people. It's over now. It's gone. Actually, here, while I'm here, I'm going to take this screenshot too. This is what I was trying to show you. It just was coming up so small, you never would have saw it. Okay, so while we're at it, take them both and I will show them to you. But yeah, so now we're gonna. My prediction is we're going to see this same situation in New York. because look at the New York Fed's the Empire State Manufacturing Index. It's been getting decimated and has been getting decimated since COVID. I just don't know that there's any coming back for these states. It's not going to happen in California, folks. They're never going to have a working class production base, a goods producing base, not unless something happens. The state collapses and something completely changes. They're going to continue to go in that direction. And I think the same is going to be true for New York, which is why it's stupid for Republican governors like Brian Kemp and Doug Ducey to have gone in the direction they did with their states. If you want to maintain a strong working base, which, by the way, Tucker is absolutely right about this. Goods producing economies lead to stronger communities. It's true. Absolutely, it is true. All right. Service sector jobs are filled by less family-oriented people. I'm sorry. That's a reality. The 9 to 5 is more conducive to family life than the career professional. That is reality. Weaker family, weaker community. Weaker community, weaker society. Weaker society, weaker state. Weaker states, weaker nation. Here's California, a tale of two migrations. I love this. Hold on one second. You can clearly see here that there has that change from 2010 on. That by the way, this is exacerbated. It has continued. We know from this new census. Excuse me. I'm like searching for water here. Here we go. Yeah, we know from the new census that was conducted under Wilbur Ross's Commerce Department that this has in fact continued. Really needed a drink of water after an hour and 40 minutes of straight talking. But the blue line is net migration from other states. All right. And then net migration from other countries, especially since there have been periods of this before. But you can see during the Bush administration and then right at the beginning of Barack Obama. At the end of the Bush administration and right at the beginning of the Obama administration, you can kind of see an explosion there of illegal immigration and legal immigration. Meanwhile, you can see people leaving that state in droves during that time. The 90s was another period of this. For those of you who did not live through it, there was a lot of concern. I would actually argue there was a much bigger problem with potential white supremacist groups. Laura, I think you would agree, in the 90s that there ever is today. Ever. I actually met skinheads and Nazis when in the 90s. I don't know a single one right now. And why? Because they were more prevalent in schooling and they just were around and it was a big deal. What the hell's the name of that movie? American History X. Think American History X. That was actually a problem in the 90s. That was like a legit scene. And there were serious concerns with people in California at the time, in San Diego and Orange County and other places that, even places like Venice Beach, that the once beautiful Gold Coast was about to be completely decimated by poverty and illegal immigration. And a lot of people left. And you can see it. By the way, Herbert Walker Bush did nothing to stop this. You can see it started under him. You could blame Bill Clinton, but it started under Herbert Walker Bush. They did nothing to secure the border. He was too busy securing Kuwait's border, right? Can we be real? Can we get real for a second? Herbert Walker Bush was too worried about Kuwait to care about the border on the United States, the border between Mexico and California, and what is now, by the way, effectively owned, that channel, by cartels. We did see some retreats in illegal immigration during the financial crisis. This is the basis of the work by Michael Barone, who said there was a net negative. There was a slightly net negative total during the financial crisis because a lot of people left. They decided that We weren't the land of dreams, hopes, and promises after all, and actually it disproportionately hurt them, which is why, by the way, this next chart should make a whole lot of sense to you. You can see in which state or territory were you born, or were you born outside the U.S. You can clearly see, obviously, the lion's share in that polling that was conducted came from Arizona, 48.6%. Out of curiosity, let's put this into a row and see place of birth this time. And we will see whether or not that's roughly the same or if it has gone down some. And, obviously, if it has gone down some, it would suggest that the native population will be shrinking even more. And I suppose it has. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. It's less than 40% in the new survey. So you had, and it is the difference between a midterm electorate and a presidential electorate, which would have more, obviously, in a presidential electorate, a lot more people of different, stripes. But for the most part, we can clearly see here that trend is continuing. There are less people who are born in the state of Arizona being part of the electorate, which, again, is a good thing for Republicans. If you actually do understand that people who are from Arizona are actually not as Republican as they used to be. And the new movers are keeping states like Arizona and Nevada and Texas more Republican than they should be, all right? Or otherwise would have been. And that's part illegal immigration and it's part education. That's what's happening. That's what's doing it. It's the building of an underclass while, building or institutionalizing a privileged class. All right. That's what's happening. So you can see that map. That's what I was reading out to you before. Texas, Nevada, Arizona, you can see. And then after Nevada comes Washington and Oregon, or Oregon and Washington, right? Some of the other states also got some of this, population. But interestingly enough, the same repeat offenders come up. After Arizona comes California, right? And we know that is also the case in the new polling. After California comes Illinois. After Illinois, or in that polling comes New York, and then goes Illinois. I think we're slightly more Illinois in this one, but same top three. Big blue states. Big blue states are the top three non-Arizona states, and they are Republicans. They are not Democrats. So the next time you hear people say, because we're coming to an end here, the next time you hear people say, well, if it wasn't for all these people coming from California, Arizona would still be red. That is not true. Well, if it wasn't for all the people who flooded Nevada, that state would still be red. Prior to 2010, you could make that case. After 2010, you cannot. Well, they keep trying to turn Texas blue with all this immigration and all of this flooding from California, residents. That is not true. The Anglo vote, as they call it in Texas, is not as Republican as it used to be. The Anglo vote sent their kids to college, at which point they got brainwashed, institutionalized, sorry, pumped with liberal views, and they got more liberal. This is not debatable. This isn't right-wing talk. This is not debatable. This is what has happened. The Anglo vote, the domestic vote, the native vote, whatever you want to call it, had a better life for their children than they had for them. They worked their butts off. They sent their children and grandchildren to institutions who turned them into a privileged class. And if it wasn't for some of those recent movers, and if it wasn't for some of these new Hispanics that are coming, I'm telling you folks, this is a sea change. It is happening right before our eyes. And speaking of the pollsters and forecasters that we were talking about before, they're really not smart enough to see it. Or acknowledge it, maybe. Maybe the problem is that they're not smart enough to acknowledge it because they're stuck in their own bias. But it is happening. Beto O'Rourke +2. Get the hell out of here. Just stop it. The primary vote in all of these states on the Republican side was younger and less white than it has ever been before. From Texas to Arizona to Nevada, too, by the way. It simply was not a Republican primary electorate as your grandfather knew it, as your father knew it, as Mitt Romney knew it. It's younger, it's more diverse. And frankly, education or not, it's more independent. Because I'm telling you, you nest education with income, and all of a sudden, things look really weird. Things get really weird. It just doesn't seem to make much sense. All right. So with that in mind, we're going to try to reschedule someone we had a problem with. Actually, two people. One got sick. The other one had tech issues. But Friday, we'll answer a lot more of your questions. I'm going to try to answer a few of them real quick here before the end of the, because they're relevant to this one, and I don't want to wait until the next episode. Okay, there's three I want to definitely get to because they're relevant to what we're talking about today. The first one was from Alex. Who is the kind of voter who would split their ticket and vote for Kemp, but not Walker? Do you think it is the incumbent advantage for Warnock? I don't think it's incumbency. I don't. There's going to be a more affluent white vote. All right, the African American vote's not going to decide. The margin among whites will in the Senate race. And what is absolutely happening in a state like Georgia is look at what Kemp did. I've criticized Doug Ducey for allowing like some tech people and people like Nike in there. Why do you think Roy Cooper fought like hell to get the new Apple plant in Wake County? Because these are the kinds of jobs, the kind of economy that's going to attract their voters. All right. Same thing with Kemp. He's an idiot. Why would you allow a second Tinseltown in Atlanta and parts of it in Savannah? Why would you do that? Or not even allow it? Why would you lobby for it? Beg for it? These are people that aren't from Georgia. They don't share Georgia. You're actually attracting not the working class base of people who make alternative energy plants and live in tight-knit communities and vote Republican straight ticket. These are people who are going to be entertainment and media news industry professional class voters. So that's kind of the voter that would split that ticket there. Other professional class voters that would split their ticket there, unless they hear about Warnock throwing out his tenants over $22.50 late rents during the pandemic. I mean, they'll want to feel like they're doing the right thing, look like they're doing the right thing. And frankly, it is always true that a Republican establishment candidate is going to get more out of the MAGA base than the MAGA base is ever going to get out of them. If you have a situation like when we first started polling the governor's race, I actually thought that Kemp could lose and that Purdue, I still think he can, and that Purdue could do better. But what happened? Donald Trump himself, and his surrogates like John Fredericks and others who were really beating on Purdue, they lost the primary to Brian Kemp and did everything in their power to make sure that their voters understood, look, Stacey Abrams is not an option. You must still vote for Brian Kemp. And they sold it. And so they're getting the MAGA base to vote for Kemp, at least in sufficient numbers. And you can see it. Plus, Kemp's getting more of squishy moderates, right? Kemp is not doing, or I would say the establishment is not giving enough to Walker in exchange for what Walker is giving to Kemp. And it's been like this everywhere, guys. Rob Portman got so much from the MAGA base than Donald Trump got from Rob Portman's Rhino base in Ohio. That's just a fact. But that's a great question. And it goes to what we're talking about today, state-to-state migration. It's funny. In the 2010 to 2020 census, almost all of these blue metro areas have been bleeding population like crazy. Detroit, New York, Illinois, Chicago, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. A lot of these urban centers actually lost population, yet somehow they still pumped out more votes. Anyway, they lost population. And Phoenix, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Austin, I think, as well, but Phoenix, Dallas-Fort Worth, and the Atlanta metro area. They were ones that did not. They were gaining population. That's who was gaining. That's who was moving there. All right? Those are professional class. And they are not Republicans, you know. And by the way, who will move to Wake County in North Carolina? People who work for Apple. You think they're going to be all like John Gibbs? He worked for Apple. No, John Gibbs was a minority in his view at Apple. But that, really good question. Why aren't populists running on fixing the census and electoral vote mess? Because they haven't taken over control yet. Obviously, and we polled it, of whether or not people think that the census should ask, for instance, citizenship questions, because they are aware that it does impact the amount of electoral votes a state receives. It impacts the congressional districts. It's important. Allocation, government spending, they're allocated based on that. It's important, and the vast majority of Americans of all stripes want a citizenship question. Trump was left to fight that all alone. The Supreme Court kicked the can because they punted. They said he did have the power to do it. He didn't go through the right channels. I mean, it was a bureaucratic ruling of the highest order, really disgraceful. It's funny. It's like, and not that I oppose gay marriage, personally. I'm just saying, gay marriage and all of these other rulings that went for the left, you know, the justification wasn't that was in the law. It was like, well, public opinion's moving that way anyway now. Well, public opinion was overwhelmingly on the side of adding a citizenship question to the census, like we did, by the way, on every freaking census in our history leading up until the very recent modern era. 50 years ago. That's it. That's when we started adding this. That we started to remove the citizenship question from the census. That's all, ladies and gentlemen. It had been asked every friggin' year, every census. The ACS is like a mini census, and it's more frequent. But, you know, it doesn't seem like that justified a ruling. Courts aren't supposed to rule on popular opinion anyway. It's supposed to rule in the law. And the law is very clear. Absolutely, Wilbur Ross could add the damn census question. Some administrative, what's the word I'm looking for? Loophole. It's ludicrous. They should be, and I imagine Lamont, when they take further control of the Republican Party, that things like that will start to become more prevalent in the attitudes. But right now, leadership, and more prevalent in the arguments you'll hear during election cycles. But unfortunately, you know, the leadership of this party that we're talking about is still very much rhino, and they got to go, you know, before all that really can change. Are liberals from blue states going to make Georgia permanently blue? Georgia will be a battleground state for a while. It will. It depends, too, on a few things. The Hispanic vote in Georgia is actually rather conservative, and it's also true that black voters are more conservative in Georgia than they are in the nation as a whole, and Republicans tend to outperform their national numbers among black voters in Georgia. For instance, like that crappy Quinnipiac poll. And by the way, there's a poll up today that has Walker up by 2 or something. 46-44. Yes, Walker's up by 2. So, I mean, that race is just not over. This idea that it's likely Democrat, shame on Decision Desk. And I love them. I love those guys. They know I love them. Shame, you know, sorry, Drew, but shame on you guys. Shame on you guys. You know damn well that race in North Carolina is not close. You know that Sherry Beasley doesn't. Listen, if Georgia is likely Democrat, then North Carolina is likely Republican. And you know it because you were just talking about how Ted Budd was going to win by at least 5. So then put your money where your mouth is. Why aren't you leaning your model? He's got money. He outspent Cherry Beasley last month. He's outspending her again this month. So what the hell are you talking about? Polls? North Carolina hasn't accurately been polled in 10 years. 10 years. I'm not kidding. Since they projected that Mitt Romney would take that state back from Barack Obama. And by the way, that was not a consensus until the end, until the final couple weeks of October. Some polls thought that Barack Obama would indeed hold North Carolina. They all thought Tom Tillis was going to lose to Kay Hagan, except for one Republican pollster, Harper, that everybody mocked. And that was their final. Even they had Tillis down a couple of times before. Their final was Tillis plus 1 or 2 or something. Everybody else had leads for Kay Hagan between 7 and 13%. That was 2014. In 2016, do I need to dig up the Nate Cohen headline from the New York Times? Trump's position in North Carolina has further deteriorated with non-college whites, and it's just not mathematically possible for him to either win the state, doing so poorly among these white voters, or it's not mathematically possible for him to win the Electoral College if he can't even carry North Carolina. Remember that? Hillary plus 6, Biden plus 6. Cunningham plus 10. 10. Give me a break. Meanwhile, the Democrats you spoke to from Mecklenburg to Pitt County knew they were down. So how is it with the public polling and 538 was blue, North Carolina was blue. In the last 4 election cycles, 538 and North Carolina blue. That's another one. I totally missed that in my little rundown. I don't know how I forgot to add North Carolina. I'm out of time. I don't think it'll be a permanently blue state. I think it will be a lean, and it is a leans, it's purple to leans red. It really is. And actually for locals, let's do a voter analysis project for Georgia. All right. And we'll throw it up there. I'd really love to try to poll Georgia again one more time. There's couple states I'm gonna do Arizona basically until the bitter end, and I might do an exit poll there. It looks like, but I'm gonna poll them pre-election poll till damn near the bitter end. I want to try to do Georgia one more time, and Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Yeah. I'd love to try, but we'll see. I'm trying to be modest, and we definitely need another generic ballot. That we're almost there. As a matter of fact, let me check and see where we're at with that. We're very close. Remember correctly. Let's go to the site. Let's take it to the ticker. I'm just going to go to the front page and scroll down. We are almost halfway there. 47.64%. Almost halfway. All right. So very much, and by the way, to everybody who gives, we really can't thank you enough. Share. You could either go to bigdatapoll.com and just scroll down to the bottom, or you could go to bigdatapoll.com/public polling project. And I believe you still can do that. Do I still have the redirect? See, it wants to add these hyphens here. See that? Let's see if the redirect's in now. It may not be. Nope, it's not. So you actually have to use the public polling project link, direct link. All right. I should install URLs and give you guys a short link. I did get a couple domains I wanted to just straight redirect, but I'll throw them in the, in all the live chats right now. Share it far and wide. Share. That's the name of the game today. All right. Yeah, I really want to poll Pennsylvania again too. I saw you, Caleb. I see you on Rumble. I absolutely do. I mean, I know that's a biggie. I feel like nobody wants to be the first one to get Oz in a lead. I really do. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find out that Mastriano's voters are more difficult. I do believe there are Oz Shapiro voters or Oz blank voters. I do. I also, there are also going to be Mastriano blank voters. I just think that Mastriano was abandoned by the Republican Governors Association. Shame on them. They Pat Citarelli'd him. Shame on them. Shame. And they didn't do it based on the fact they didn't think he couldn't win. They did it based on the fact they believe he could win. He could. So they abandoned him because they don't want him to win. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a Republican, you're going to be very upset with what I have to say, but it's true. Your party is trying to sabotage you. They are. That is absolutely happening. They're trying to sabotage MAGA candidates in the House. They're trying to sabotage Blake Masters and J.D. Vance, MAGA people in the Senate. And they are absolutely, especially in battleground states, trying to sabotage governors. With somebody like a Mastriano in Pennsylvania, it's just much easier to do it and get away with it, pretending like you're not doing it because your real reason, which is this. And I'm going to tell you right now. They don't want Doug Mastriano to be the governor of Pennsylvania when Donald Trump runs for president in 2024. They want somebody that they know will not enforce the law so that they can, they could be like the Wild West. You get me? You feel me? That's what they're trying to do. Whomever is the governor of a state has great control over whether or not an election is conducted like free-for-all or whether the letter of the law is followed. Think about Wisconsin. Tony Evers allowing, some of these local people to just work with Mark Zuckerberg and change rules that were long-time standing rules that later courts said they were not allowed to do. Gretchen Whitmer did the same thing in Michigan. She allowed Jocelyn Benson to unilaterally change laws that later judges said they did not have the power to do. It was always too late. It was always like a day late, $1 short. It was after the fact, right? Josh Shapiro is the man who was the attorney general. He is the one who told Joe Biden, don't worry, Allegheny is going to find enough margin. All right. So that's who will be the man who's effectively facilitating, the election. So it will have a great impact. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Rick Scott was the governor in 2018. So he put that in what was happening in Broward County. It happened quite a bit already, but he put the kibosh on it. And then later, Brenda Snipes was fired. Look at what happened in Broward County after she was fired. The election was conducted smoothly and effectively. It matters. And don't let anybody tell you it doesn't, because they're lying. Everybody knows. Every political operative knows. Every election forecaster knows. Every stupid idiot on TV who claims to be a political pundit knows that whoever controls the governor's mansion during a presidential election is the one who's really in charge of vote counting. That is a reality in the United States of America. All right? All right. That was a mouthful. It's 2:05, but you know what? I started 8 minutes late, so it is what it is. Share. All right. We love you as always. We'll see you on Friday. Don't miss it. We're going to try to reschedule some of those things that we had today that we didn't get on there. I really hope we do. All right. And then by Friday, we'll start to put together, because we're already on October 12th, we'll start to put together what effectively will be, I guess now, our final generic ballot. All right. I keep forgetting. I just screw up Jack's name. Bill, I just screw up his name. I keep calling him Pat because I'm thinking about the other guy. I'm mixing the two of them together. I just do it. That's a good question. Bill Francis, why do you always call him Pat Citarelli? I just keep forgetting. Jack Citarelli. It's just like, honestly, I don't want this to sound the wrong way. It's just like, they all just start to blend together to me after a while. They really do. All right. With that in mind, we'll see you Friday. We'll start talking about what we're going to ask on the last generic ballot. And, we'll take a look, at what else is in the pipes. And, of course, it's Free Will on Friday, so we'll answer your questions. But the lesson of the day here is the next time you hear somebody say, damn it, if it wasn't for those people of California, this state would, that is not true. It is not true. Professional classes moving from other areas, not California, who gains professional classes. It's professional classes from other areas of the country that are moving to places like Phoenix and, for Nike to work at the Nike base or whatever. It's people who are moving to the mini Tinseltown that Kemp promoted for a new media and entertainment industry in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm giving you examples, but those are good. In Savannah, by the way. I'm giving you examples. It's not, of course, the sum total of it, but it is good examples of it. But overall, If it wasn't for newly naturalized, mostly Mexican, Cuban, and Venezuelan, but there are others, newly naturalized Hispanic working class, and if it wasn't for the working class who are leaving California, Illinois, New York, then these states would be more democratic already, all right? Because of institutionalized second generation or more privileged white people. All right, that's the truth, because that's what the numbers say. That's what the numbers say. And that's why we call it Inside the Numbers. All right, folks, have a great rest of the day. We'll see you on Friday. Deuces, locals. Keep an eye out for Georgia. All the best.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.